I've always known my sister Megan could be cruel, but I never thought she could look me in the eye and steal something that meant everything to me. It started right after Grandpa passed away. He had always been the one person in the family who saw me, really saw me, for who I was. While my parents favored Megan, the pretty, outgoing, always charming daughter, I was the quiet one, the kid who read books at family barbecues and preferred listening over speaking. Grandpa used to say that I had an old soul. When we got the call that he had passed, it felt like someone had knocked the air out of me. The funeral was small but painful. Megan stood next to me, sobbing loudly, drawing sympathy from everyone around. I cried too, but quietly, holding on to the last memory I had of him smiling at me and calling me his little lighthouse. A few days later, the talk of Grandpa's will started. Grandpa had worked hard his whole life, and although he wasn't rich, he had two things everyone in the family cared about: his house, old, cozy, and filled with memories, and a small box of family heirlooms passed down through generations. At dinner one night, Megan announced to the whole family, "Grandpa left everything to me: the house, the heirlooms, all of it. He told me privately before he passed." I remember my heart sinking. I couldn't understand why he'd do that. Grandpa had always been fair, and he knew how much that house meant to me. My parents just nodded, as if it all made sense. Dad said, "Well, it's for the best. You were always closer to him, Megan." That night, I sat alone in my room, staring at an old photo of Grandpa and me on the porch of that house. I wanted to believe Megan was lying, but what if she wasn't? The days that followed were worse. Megan acted like she owned the place already. She bragged about renovating the living room, told distant relatives not to bother asking for souvenirs, and even joked that she might sell the old rocking chair Grandpa loved because it was ugly and ancient. Every time she spoke like that, something twisted inside me, but I stayed quiet. The family had already chosen sides. They looked at me like I was being petty, jealous. Then, about 2 weeks later, Aunt Margaret called. Aunt Margaret had been close to Grandpa too, and she sounded nervous. She told me Grandpa had left something special, a sealed letter addressed to me, and the official will was still with the family lawyer. The will, she hinted, was surprising. I barely slept that night. The next day, our family gathered for what was supposed to be a reading of the will. Megan strutted around, confident, smiling like a cat who'd caught a mouse. My parents looked relaxed, certain that Grandpa had done what Megan claimed. When the lawyer opened his briefcase and took out the envelope, the room quieted. He cleared his throat and began to read. And that's when everything changed.
The lawyer's voice was calm, but every word felt like a thunderclap. To my granddaughter Megan, I leave my love and hope that you will one day understand the true value of family. As for my home, my keepsakes, and everything within, these I leave to my other granddaughter, the one who never asked for anything but gave me everything. The words hung in the air. For a moment, nobody moved. Megan's smile froze and her face turned pale. My father opened his mouth as if to say something, but nothing came out. My mother looked from Megan to me as if trying to process what she had just heard. Then the lawyer took out a second letter, the sealed envelope Aunt Margaret had mentioned. He handed it to me with a small nod. My hands were shaking as I opened it. Grandpa's handwriting was instantly familiar, neat and deliberate. "My little lighthouse," it began. "If you're reading this, it means the time has come. I know you better than anyone else, and I know you might doubt yourself. Don't. You have always had a light inside you, and I trust you to protect what truly matters. The house, the heirlooms, they're yours because you understand why they're important, not just what they're worth." By the time I looked up, tears were streaming down my face. The room was silent except for Megan's breathing, sharp, uneven, almost like she was about to scream. Finally, Megan found her voice. "No, this can't be right," she shouted, her face red and twisted with anger. "Grandpa told me, he promised. This isn't fair." But the lawyer remained calm. "This is the legally binding will. It was signed and witnessed, and it overrides anything that might have been said verbally before he passed." Megan turned to my parents, desperate. "Say something. Tell them this isn't true." My father shifted uncomfortably. I don't know, Megan. If this is what your grandfather wanted." My mother wouldn't even meet her eyes. For the first time in my life, it felt like the truth had finally found a voice louder than Megan's. And for the first time, Megan couldn't talk her way out of it. She stormed out of the room, slamming the door so hard the picture frames rattled on the walls. I just sat there, still holding Grandpa's letter, my heart pounding in my chest. The lawyer quietly packed his papers and stood to leave. As he did, he paused and placed a hand on my shoulder. "He really did care about you," he said softly. "He wanted to make sure you'd be okay." After everyone else left, I stayed in the dining room staring at the empty chairs, trying to make sense of everything that had just happened. Part of me felt relieved, but another part of me hurt for Megan, because as selfish and cruel as she'd been, I knew that deep down she had just lost the illusion she'd built for herself. But Grandpa had trusted me, and I wasn't going to let him down. In the days that followed, my life changed in ways I still struggled to describe. The next morning after the reading, I drove out to Grandpa's house alone. It felt so strange unlocking that heavy wooden door, knowing that now it belonged to me, but also knowing that it had always felt like home. The air smelled faintly of cedar and dust. Sunlight streamed in through the living room windows, highlighting the familiar worn edges of the furniture Grandpa had stubbornly refused to replace. His old leather chair still faced the fireplace, just as he'd left it. I stood there for a while, just breathing it all in. It felt like he could walk in at any moment, grumbling about the draft or asking me to fetch him his reading glasses. Upstairs in the little attic office where Grandpa kept his papers, I found a small box labeled, "For when the time is right." Inside were photographs of us together over the years, fishing trips, birthdays, moments I had almost forgotten. There was also a note in his handwriting. "If you're seeing this, it means you kept your heart kind. That's all I ever wanted." Reading those words made me break down completely. For so long, I had let myself feel overshadowed by Megan, her confidence, her way of charming everyone around her, her ability to make me doubt my worth. But Grandpa had seen through all of it. He had known me in ways no one else did. In the following weeks, Megan tried to contest the will. She sent angry texts, called at all hours, even showed up at the house demanding that I do the right thing and give her what she felt was hers. It hurt to see her like that, bitter, frantic, convinced that everything she'd lost was because of me. But deep down, I knew that giving in wouldn't fix anything. Grandpa's words kept echoing in my mind. "You understand why these things matter, not just what they're worth." Instead, I started to focus on preserving the house and everything it meant to our family. I sorted through Grandpa's boxes, cataloged old photographs, restored broken picture frames. In the evenings, I'd sit by the fireplace, reading his favorite books, almost like keeping him company. Neighbors stopped by sometimes, bringing stories about Grandpa I had never heard. They'd talk about how he always offered them a chair on the porch or slipped money into donation jars at the local library. Piece by piece, I saw a fuller picture of him, and in that picture, I realized why he'd left it all to me. It wasn't about punishment or revenge against Megan. It was about trust, about believing that I'd keep the spirit of the family alive, even if it meant doing it quietly, without applause. One rainy afternoon, as I walked through the garden behind the house, I noticed a small plaque near the old oak tree, "For those who keep the light alive." I had never seen it before, but somehow I felt like it had always been there, waiting for me to find it. I thought about Megan, about the anger that had poisoned her, and for the first time, I didn't feel afraid of her anymore. I felt sorry. I hoped somehow she might find her own light too. Months passed, and the house started to feel more like my own. I opened it up to the family during holidays, invited cousins and distant relatives. It felt good to share it, to see kids playing in the hallways where I used to hide, to hear laughter echo off the walls again. At Christmas, I stood in front of the fireplace and read aloud Grandpa's last letter to everyone. The room went quiet, but this time it wasn't the awkward silence of shock. It was the quiet of people listening, really listening. When I finished, someone started to clap, and then everyone joined in. It wasn't for me, really. It was for him. In that moment, I realized Grandpa hadn't just left me a house or some old keepsakes. He'd left me a purpose, a reminder that kindness lasts longer than resentment, and love outlives bitterness. And maybe, just maybe, that was the real inheritance all along.